listening online, calling to order our High Point City Council meeting for Monday, October 2nd. I want to thank everybody for coming out. It's nice to see folks in the room and taking part in local government. I'd like to begin the meeting by stating that we do have a quorum present. All members of council are present here with the exception of Councilman Britt Moore, and I do believe we expect him before too much longer. With that being said, I'd like to ask everyone please to rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm going to begin the meeting by reading a proclamation regarding Public Power Week. Whereas public power is a crucial component in cities and towns across North Carolina, contributing to the overall health of communities by providing reliable electricity, excellent local service, and prompt restoration. And whereas North Carolina's more than 70 public power cities and towns are among more than 2,000 across the country, and most North Carolina public power cities and towns have been electric providers for more than 100 years. And whereas the City of High Point maintains 784 miles of distribution lines, over 27,000 streetlights, 14 substations, and nearly 44,000 electric customers. And whereas public power meets the electric needs of 40 million Americans, almost 15% of electricity customers. Whereas North Carolina's public power utilities are valuable community assets that contribute to the well-being of the community and provide economic development opportunities. And whereas North Carolina's public power utilities are dependable institutions that provide excellent service and a commitment to the community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of the City of High Point, North Carolina do hereby proclaim the week of October 1st through 7th, 2023 as Public Power Week in the City of High Point, and joins our other North Carolina public power communities as well as all public power systems in the United States in the celebration of public power. Tyler, come get this. Yeah, I'll come down.
I'm so sorry. Do I? Okay.
Okay, next on the agenda is our strategic plan update. I will begin by recognizing Councilmember Chris Williams for an update on our blight reduction efforts.
Thank you, Mayor. The following report summarizes the code enforcement activities for the month of September. Under minimum housing, we have 16 new citizen complaints, 10 new city-initiated cases. And demolitions, we have 2 properties pending asbestos abatement, 1 owner-initiated demolition, which is 1707 Wellburn Street, and 7 properties pending owner repairs, which is 1205 Filbert, 1105 Forest, 613 Manley, 524 Cross, 1222 Carter Street, and, sorry y'all, this is small print, 1004 Prospect, and 337 Wingo. Next, we have the public nuisance, and it's 100 new citizen complaints, 150 new city-initiated cases, 216 cases abated, 59 by the city, and 157 by the owners. Zoning, we have 16 new citizen complaints, 32 new city-initiated cases, 76 signs collected. Told you the number was going to go up. Then under total activity cases, we have 571. 236 of them are minimum housing, 183 public nuisance, and 152 zoning. Next, we're going to turn the floor over to Nina. You doing it? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, we'll turn the floor over to staff. Plan. Yes.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council, and our city manager. The graph that you see depicted is basically a summary of the numbers that Councilman Williams just read. And as you can see, when we talk about proactive code enforcement, we do have just as many, or about, I would say about 50% more when it comes to public nuisance and zoning that our city initiated. So we continue to enforce proactive code enforcement, and staff, they are out there in the community trying to improve our city. And so the property that we'd like to show you this evening is 802 Carrick Street. This is what the property looked like back in 2019. The case actually started around July of 2019. We don't have any of the interior, any photos of the interior, but this is what the property looks like now. And the property has been sold and is owner occupied.
It is.
Yes, and so this is what can happen when we have property owners that work with city staff and we work to get properties repaired, because we know that there's a housing shortage and we need all of the properties that we can get as opposed to demolishing them.
You beat me to the punch, and I was going to ask that question. I was like, is that thing for rent or sale?
It was
I know a
for
lot of people
sale,
that
and
can,
yes, it actually closed in August.
Awesome. That is awesome. Thank you so much. Mayor, that's all we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Holmes, you have an update on marketing and branding?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much. Civic Brand and our staff, marketing staff, continue to work with our internal departments like public safety, library, and theater on the implementation of our new brand into our existing brands. And so they've been working on this concept all week. We should have all the department mock-ups ready to go either by the end of this week or early next week. And so we'll start to transition those new ones once we go over that with the departments, and then you'll start to see more and more of our city vehicles and things transition to our new brand markup. And so we're just continuing to identify our signage throughout the city as well, and we'll be updating those as we go along. So continue to look around and look how great staff looks in our new, in the brand new swag and everything like that. I'm a little jealous because all I have is this one. So if anybody's listening out there, maybe we can get updated with the new gear. So, but it looks great, and the brand continues to penetrate into the city. You're starting to see it across all of our city now, new flags and everything flying. So I'm really pleased at how well this is going.
Thank you, Councilman Holmes.
Of course.
Next on the agenda is the public comment period. Public comments period is held on our first regular meeting of the month. People who have signed the register to speak will be taken in the order in which they're listed. Others who wish to speak and have not signed in will be taken after those who've registered. We ask that you come forward when your name is called to the lectern. Give us your name and address for our record, and we ask, or your comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask you to stick to that, please. First on the list is Reverend Frank Thomas.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, Madam City Manager. That's what you are. Yeah, that's you. Yeah. I'm Frank Thomas. I pastor Mount Zion Baptist Church at 753 Washington Street. And I rise today to voice a few questions. I know that council doesn't typically answer questions during this period, but I just want to voice them and let you know that the community, myself included, have some questions, especially during this election season. 2 questions in particular. I'm wondering how and why a member of council can vote in committee for the fair housing ordinance and then vote against it when it comes before council. Just a question. Another question I have is how a member of council can vote against funding the disparity study in committee, but then vote for it at council. Just a question. Not suggesting that council members are being disingenuous, but it is a little confusing that you hear that you vote one way in committee and one way at the dais. Just a question.
Okay. Next person on the list is Willie Kittrell. Did I say that correctly? Kittrell. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kittrell.
Good evening. My name is Willie Kittrell. I'm State Director for AAU football here in North Carolina. Been AAU football director for over 10 years. Been living in High Point for over 30 years. Today, I'm here to speak on the events that we have brought to High Point. Since becoming state director, my number one goal was to make High Point the home of AAU football. The economic impact that has resulted from me being state director, I didn't look for any accolades or any acknowledgments. I just wanted to do it for me, against my wife's judgment. I'm gonna listen to her next time. But we have major tournaments that me and my partner, he's the state commissioner, is a part of. We bring in our state playoffs, which consist of about 30 teams. We bring in our state championship, which, if I give you the numbers, it's around 1,200 people. I also do the spring nationals as well as fall nationals, and that's the big nationals that we have. Of course, you know, AAU is the largest youth organization it is for sports. So with football, this past year, we had 58 teams to come to Fort Mill, South Carolina. The reason why I didn't have it in High Point because I'm having difficulties locking down fields under one complex. And High Point only has one particular site that I can use, and that's High Point Athletic Park. I've been in correspondence with Tyler Cole, with Odell, with the people there, trying to secure fields. And you guys wouldn't believe the hard time that we're getting. They're turning down money that I'm sending to Fort Mill, South Carolina, which we had over 15,000 people there. The CVB of Fort Mill, South Carolina said that was the second largest event that he had. And was only 4 fields. 4 fields, and right there in that very same complex, we have access to A.J. Simeon Stadium. I could have held that right here, and that economic impact would have came here to High Point. But instead, I sent it somewhere else. Now, the reason why I'm here, we also have another event called Battle of the Border, where North Carolina takes on Virginia. On September 16th, we travel to Virginia for the first round of that. October 7th is coming up, and they're coming to us here in High Point. I need at least 3 fields. They gave us permission to use 2, which one is not even a football field, but we're gonna make it a football field. The north field, which is, I think is the upper field, if I'm mispronouncing it, it's another name, please excuse me. We need that field as well. Parents have kids on multiple age groups. We have 6U through 14U, odd and even. So that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way through 14. We can't send one team over to Southwest and the other 2 teams here because parents want to see their team, little Johnny, play. Grandparents want to see. Was that my time?
Yeah, but go ahead and finish up.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're expecting around 2,500 to 2,800 spectators. I contacted Tyler Cole, said, please let me use this field. He turned me down. I have email correspondence here I can pass out to each one of you guys showing that. I said, please let me use this field. I want to keep it here. Salisbury already put in a request to have the tournament, as well as Fayetteville. We don't want that. We want it here. I live here. I want it here. High Point is the home of AAU. He told me the field is designated for soccer. That field was originally designated for football. I used to coach there. I won a championship there with Alan J. He said the field is now designated for soccer. And I said, well, I'll do you a favor. I'll put the younger age groups on it so we won't damage the field. No, we have a contract with Gifford County Schools. I'm in relationships with a good friend of mine is Ralph Kitley. He's the facilitator for Gifford County Schools. That's who the contract is through. I asked him, will it be possible if AAU can use that field? He sent me an email and CC Tyler on the email saying, we have his permission to use that field. It's not a problem with us. These guys have used A.J. Simeon for years and left it in better shape than it was when they got there. Tyler responded the next day, said, no, we cannot use the field. I offered to paint the field with a professional painter. I said, if that would help. He said, no. I offered to just use cones instead of painting the fields. He still said no. Now it seems like this group is being discriminated on. And that's all I have to say. Please make a judgment if you can to allow us to use this field, because I cannot allow teams to be spread out across, or it's going to make us look bad and we won't have this tournament again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kittrell. Terrell Easter.
Thank you, City Council. My name is Terrell Easter. I reside at 410 Twain Avenue. I am the State Commissioner for AAU football. That's my partner. Just to kind of pick up where he left off, with the Battle of the Borders tournament that we have coming now, we're going to have to cut games. We originally had 20 games slated for that day. We're not going to be able to do 20 games on 2 fields. So that's the biggest discrepancy. Also, we were given permission. We gave maybe 4 dates last year of possible locations or possible dates where we're going to need for our playoffs, our jamboree, just different dates, including this Battle of the Borders dates. So we went back and forth. Originally, we got approved for 3 dates, the jamboree and 2 of the playoff dates that we had in November. But they would not give us October the 7th, which is coming up. So, of course, after talking and staying on them, they eventually gave us October the 7th, like my partner said, but they took away the other days with no reason why they took away the other days. So we had to take our jamboree to another to another city. We're going to take our playoffs to another city because we're not able to use the facilities. I guess the sad part is we have a relationship with Parks and Rec. We've used these fields in the past when Parks and Rec had football teams. So we were able to work around their dates. It just seemed like all of a sudden this year, we're getting a lot of pushback. And it's tough because, like my partner said, with Spring Nationals, we have Spring Nationals coming up this summer. We want to hold it in High Point. Like he said, I think he was downplaying the numbers a little bit. We did have 58 teams come, but we probably had easily over 15,000 to 18,000 people there throughout the whole week. And we want to have it here, but it's no way we can facilitate that with the issues that we're having with Park and Rec. So we're coming here because we want to voice our concern. This is not for AAU. It's other youth leagues, other youth football teams that's going through this same problem. They just don't have the time or the knowledge to know the next step to take. So this is not going to just impact our league. It's going to impact all of the youth sports leagues, all football leagues. And I guess I'll close by saying that I understand that a lot of fields are may be designated for soccer. So that's why we went and got permission from the athletic director to use the field. We still got declined. And what it's looking like we're being discriminated against, because I've been in youth sports since '97 here in High Point. And soccer uses football fields all the time. Why can't football teams use fields that's designated for soccer? It's the same dimensions. You have to paint the field differently, of course, but that's my biggest question, because I see soccer teams able to use football fields all the time. But when it's a field designated for soccer and we may need to use it, we get the biggest pushback. So that's concerning. I'm sorry, that's concerning. And that's the biggest reason why we're here today, because we do have an event coming up Saturday. And if we can't get that top field, I think it's called the C. Morris soccer field. If we can't get that, I'm going to have to cut 8 games, which means 8 families that's coming down from Virginia, they're not going to be able to come. So I definitely appreciate your guys' time, and hopefully we can get this resolved. If we can't get it resolved this year, hopefully going into next year, we can get it resolved, because we are going to be prepared to move it to another city.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I'll just ask the manager and staff to communicate with you guys.
Yeah.
And see if there's something we can work out.
Do I need to reach out, or do they have my contact?
If you would see,
Assistant City Manager DeCane has worked with the team in the past and will continue to do so.
speak with this gentleman. Put your hand up. There you go. All right. Okay, good. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public comment? Yes, sir. Please come forward and give us your name and address.
Guess I took the long way. Justin Stab at 1207 Main Street. I own Stab Designs. I'm a custom design build firm here in High Point. Really prided myself on a lot of the projects I've done around the city, and really thank the community and the city for those opportunities to help me grow my business. I've really found myself in the past few years being a destination for not only local organizations, schools, but also international groups, designers, makers, with furniture companies, not just maker designers that have a smaller portfolio, to schools all over the country, from SCAD to App State. And they schedule appointments with me to come and see my studio. And I've found that organizations and individuals from High Point by Design and local organization or businesses within HPXD specifically that have a focus on bringing the city year round, just as I know everybody in the community in the city does. So I won't cut that away from you guys at all. But I really find that the destination of High Point and the Southwest region specifically needs to have that grit and that welcoming feel to other businesses to come and find the city or High Point their home. With the resources that we've had for many years and generations behind, I'm one that if any of you want to see a lot of what I call the honey holes around High Point, from veneer shops, digital printing, to wood sources, you name it, the materials, manufacturing of silicone to casting, everything's here in High Point for this industry. And I want to see the investment of the city put into the Southwest from a visual perspective. Main Street's been beautified and given grants for, various businesses like Brown Truck and Sweet Old Bill's to beautify the street frontage facing Main Street, which is needed from an entertainment perspective. But I want to see that same kind of effort being put into the Southwest that we've named the Southwest Small Scale Manufacturing District. I have to bring my kids. Fortunately, my shop is at 1200 Reading at the old Pickett Mill, and I have to tell my 7-year and 9-year-old sons that the prostitutes there are going to birthday parties, and to kind of watch out for drugs and people laying on the side of the road. And that's my home. I mean, that's where I find my business. That's the love that we have for the art and design and what High Point is wanting to revolutionize into. And I really see that grit of High Point being the core, and it's been there for ages. All we have to do is just beautify it and bring it up, because the small businesses, the owners of these mills have put so much money into them themselves. I really want to see the city to come back behind them, so and give them their support financially and the infrastructure around. So with that, I thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stab. Anyone else like to speak? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment period, and we will move on to our consent agenda items. Get the papers set here. There are a number of consent agenda items that have come out of committee with favorable recommendations. Are there any items that anyone would like to have pulled from the consent agenda before we consider it? Okay, hearing none, then I will make a motion for approval of the consent agenda as listed. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by me and seconded by Councilman Jones. Any comments, questions on the consent agenda or on the motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. We now move to the general business agenda. First item on general business is public hearing regarding request from Don Switzer Properties LLC for performance-based incentives, the amount of $75,000. Ms. Dunback.
Yes.
How are you?
Thank you.
Which one is it?
It's this one. There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Good evening, Mayor, members of council, city managers, and members of the audience. I am Sandy Dunback. I am Director of High Point Economic Development, and I, along with my colleague Montana Brown, are here tonight to discuss two projects. The first one that we'll be discussing is HQ and the gallery. So we are asking you to consider a request from Don Switzer, who is here with us this evening and you'll be hearing from shortly, for the authorization of building upfit performance-based incentives for a project at 2429 West English Road in High Point in the amount of $75,000. And this building is in that southwest quadrant of the core city of High Point. HQ and the gallery will be a new commercial business event center in High Point, designed and owned by local designer Don Switzer. The venue will be able to host weddings, business events, parties, and performances. Guests can enjoy the main building, HQ, and also the smaller building, the gallery, which can be used for ceremonies, panel events, and exhibits. The company proposes to invest at least $225,000 in real property improvements, which will include but are not limited to plumbing improvement for bathrooms and sinks, electrical, HVAC, roofing, and lighting fixtures. Additionally, the company proposes to build a greenhouse bar, an overhang, and a second entrance and exit, some items that are required by the city. The source of these funds would be the city's Economic Development Incentive Fund, which is funded by general and electric revenues. So what we as staff are recommending is that you consider authorizing these performance-based incentives in the amount of $75,000, and that you authorize the city manager to execute a performance agreement with the company containing those benchmarks and a schedule for such a payment. And so with that, I'd like to now turn it over to Dawn. There we go. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Mayor Wagner and members of council. Thank you for having me. My name is Dawn Switzer, and I'm an artist and a creative. I moved to High Point 12 years ago and purchased a mattress factory on English Road that has since been converted into my studio. A few years after that, I had the opportunity to acquire the properties next to me. And this is where I'd like to introduce HQ and the gallery, which is a beautiful space. So this is an interior of the space that I've been working on slowly but surely. And this is a bit of the vision, which I'll just go ahead and read my notes because I'm a little nervous. There are three structures on the property. We refer to these buildings as HQ, the gallery, and the greenhouse bar. So on the upper left-hand side, you'll see the greenhouse, well, what will be the greenhouse bar. We want to do a glass roof, which will extend over a large terrace, which will add additional seating and entertainment area. The buildings are, one-of-a-kind architecture with a barreled 25 wood truss ceiling, brick walls, original hardwood floors, and windows. So it was important to me to maintain the original aesthetic, since I've been working on this building, to renovate these spaces. The initial budget for phase one is approximately $225,000. Not only will these additions revitalize the property, but it will become an asset to the community and the city of High Point. So these are the HQ is on the upper right side and right below, and the lower left side. And the photo in the center is the back terrace of HQ, which will also add seating, additional seating and overhang. This is the gallery building, which is a separate building. With this building, we will add an additional, I'll go through my notes, but we'll add an additional building that'll go off to the left-hand side and create a new facade on the West English Road. With the assistance of the grant, we will continue to improve the interior, exterior, and outdoor spaces, therefore revitalizing the property in the southwest High Point. This will be an opportunity to create an inclusive event venue for ceremonies, corporate events, exhibitions, and nonprofit organizations, just to name a few. We want everybody there. So here are a few shots of the interior of HQ, as well as the gallery. And so the grant money will be utilized renovating the following. So with HQ, here, let's see. So here's also some interior shots of HQ. You can see the beautiful barreled ceiling. HQ is approximately 3,600 square feet with a Moroccan-inspired VIP loft, which is approximately 1,200. We'll be adding a bar, seating, lighting, a large wine cooler upstairs, and on the main floor, we're adding 2 ADA-compliant bathrooms, tile and wood floors, toilets, fixtures, sinks, mirrors, etc. Also, sink on the main bar, light fixtures, AC and heating, and warming oven for the catering kitchen. Let me see what I have. For the outdoor additions on HQ, we are adding ADA-compliant walkways, paved parking, and overhang on the back of the building for the seating area and terrace. The gallery, which is our secondary building, is 1,900 square feet, and that was pictured, well, I showed you before. And for the renovation on the gallery building, we're adding AC, heating, an entrance, an exit door, a new roof. In addition to that, 4 additional ADA-compliant restrooms equipped with electricity, plumbing, AC, and heating. We'll be adding a covered courtyard that bridges the gallery to the new building, and also a secondary entrance from West English Road. The greenhouse bar is the third and final building on the property. This structure will have a glass roof that will extend over the terrace. For additional seating, we'll add doors, windows, electricity, lighting fixtures, a bar, plumbing, a stone terrace with green space and additional fencing. Lastly, okay, so here you can see sort of the layout of the whole entire space, where HQ is on the upper left, the greenhouse bar is at the far right, and then the gallery is the building on the lower, close to English Road. So the yellow rectangle you see will be what we'll be building from scratch. We also have a 30-foot sunken fire pit, which is pretty amazing. And then the blue images that you see, those will all be concrete walkways. So, and some will be covered as well. And then we'll also be adding lighting, outdoor, additional fencing, seating areas throughout, and landscaping to help define the upper and lower terraces, which are in pink. And let's see, that's it. Yeah, I want everybody to come and enjoy the space with me. But yeah, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate your time, and I'm grateful, so thank you.
Public hearing is open, so is there anyone who would like to speak in regard to this item, for or against? Okay, hearing none, then I will close the public hearing. Open the floor to the council for comments or a motion.
Motion.
Well, I was going to make a motion to approve, but I have a comment I wanted to say real quick. So I've been to the space, and it is absolutely beautiful. But more than that, it is, she's held a Creative Renegade Summit, educational summit. It's just a really great place for community to be able to use, to grow, and experience just a beautiful space and learn. And so I'm very proud of you for taking on this challenge, because it is definitely a challenge. And so, that's it.
So I've got a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. It's been a motion made to approve by Councilman Jones, seconded by Councilwoman Peters. Any other discussion, comments?
Thank you for your commitment. You're doing wonderful work there. It's
so thrilled. I
beautiful
can't wait.
space. Really looking forward to this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. All those in favor of approval of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Next item is public hearing regarding a request from COHAB Space LLC for performance-based incentives in the amount of $75,000. Public hearing is open, and we'll hear again from Ms. Dunback.
Does that matter? Thank you, Mayor, members of council, and manager. Another exciting project that Montana Brown and I are pleased to present this evening. I am Sandy Dunback of High Point Economic Development, and the project tonight is a request from COHAB Space for authorization of building upfit incentives for a project at 1547 West English Road in High Point in the amount of $75,000. And with us here tonight are John Muldoon, owner of the property and projects, and his team, Sandy Howell, Melissa Roberts, and Laura Newton. And there are many other supporters here from High Point by Design and members of the community. COHAB Space is a multi-use creative venue. The company is continuing to work on this ambitious revitalization project that started back in 2018. John Muldoon continues to seek to convert this hosiery mill into a dynamic space where music, food, art, and design flourish. The mission is to provide thoughtfully designed space that is suitable for events and conducive to furthering the work of globally minded designers and makers within the community. By continuing to foster a vibrant creative environment, the project aims to activate the West End neighborhood. COHAB Space currently consists of approximately 74,000 square feet at 1547 West English Road. The company proposes new and additional investments of $1 million in real property improvements. The source, again, of those monies would be the city's Economic Development Incentive Fund, which is funded by general and electric revenues. We recommend that you consider authorizing these performance-based incentives for $75,000, and that you would ultimately authorize the city manager to execute a performance agreement with the company containing benchmarks for the company to achieve and a schedule for the payment of such financial incentives. And with that, I'd like to call upon John Muldoon to come to the podium to share a little bit more about his vision and project. Thank you, John.
Hi, Mayor and City Council and City Manager. Thanks for taking the time tonight. Talk a little bit about COHAB Space. Bought the property in 2017, took possession really in 2018. Thought it would be a great idea to put lipstick on an elephant. And by doing so, showing that just by hard work and by bringing community together, we can actually activate a space. We've done quite well in the last 4 years. Just recently in the last year, brought on some financing to do some true lease or shell improvement in the building and to really activate it further. I'm in 74,000 square feet, And currently I'm only occupying about 30% of that. And so what I've been doing is, as we know, or most of you may know, last year we activated with a venue, concert venue in the back space. And this is our second year into that, and we're just, learning what that actually takes to activate properly. If I want to, do I just do that?
Yes, to advance, just
Okay,
arrow.
sorry. Okay. Yeah, and this just shows a little bit of where we came from. So that green one on the top left is when I first occupied the building. The one below that is 1 month before venue activation last year. And just the one on the right is basically this narrow spot between the two buildings, which was just filled in with vines and everything. And so just give you an idea on here. So this is us just, putting work into the building, fixing out the mill windows with double pane and just getting them back activated again. You can see down in the lower left is what is currently underway with the structural improvements of what we call Building 1. You can see the floor missing, so that's actually being rehabbed right now. That floor is back in place right now. And then that's what the space looks like this summer in July with the music activation. So top right was before the stage got put in. Bottom left is basically what it looks like now. And so it just allows us, with the amount of work we did in the back, it allows us if we have a big rainstorm in 10 minutes it gets dry. We did a huge amount of drainage. That was a big deal that we had to do last year. And then also the life safety with fencing and everything around the building. The next one is just we're going to play a little video for you.
Patients are wearing thin, but I can cure me with good medicine. Into perspective is where things are headed now. Waves of clearness crashing over my bow. When I think of times I've had.
Okay, and the reason for showing the video. The reason for showing the video is to really sort of show our purpose in bringing arts to the community, but also having the community welcome the arts, and also knowing it's a family-friendly venue, and the fact that we just find when anybody comes and experiences COHAB, they're not rushing to leave. They love the environment. When we used to feel, it was difficult to get people to come to the West End, we're having people readily come to the West End. They feel comfortable coming and parking and have no issues in that part of the city. So we love where we're going. We certainly know we have a long ways to go yet to truly activate completely. It's a 74,000 square foot building. And it's just, we do feel we are part of the Southwest, but we are the West End. And it's a neighborhood that we feel we've had an impact in. And we certainly look forward to the rest of the Southwest, and with Dawn's project and everything else taking off. But it's really, the reason COHAB looks like it does is it's never really a complete project, because to attract creatives and to attract artists, we had young kids from App State here last week. We had 40 design students through COHAB last week from throughout the country, SCAD, App State. I just got an email back from 4 young guys. They're going to come down and do a presentation. I'm going to go through the school up in Boone here probably next week or right after market. And you have to have something for them to work from. And so they don't want to come into a perfect finished environment. They want to come in and feel they can have an impact. And so I've really always viewed COHAB that way. So it's just, I also view music, food, art, and design as 4 elements that if they come together, it can create something which is quite dynamic. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Muldoon. Anyone have any questions, Mr. Muldoon?
Oh, I have one more, sorry, I wanted to show you. Sorry. I just, so this is a couple other photos I forgot, I had to go past the video. It just sort of shows us the inside of the gallery, the art gallery, the showroom, and then the band with Flatland Cavalry. And then that's a picture of COHAB space pointing towards downtown. So it's actually, it shows the proximity, it also shows the scale of it, and also the size, the impact it can have on this neighborhood, but it's so close to the other Catalyst project, or to the Catalyst project, and you could imagine that with some bike lanes and some walkways and what that could look like to make that connection. And then this is a pin set for when we do since June. So when we have bands come in, we know that we have to draw an audience from outside High Point for the venue, the type of venue we're doing to survive. And so this is the pin sets I send to Melody at Visit High Point after I finish a season. And so, we're getting people from all over the state. We're getting people from depending on the band, they'll travel for a long way. People travel to festivals. So we also view COHAB as a fest-style venue. So it's a place where you don't have to worry about camping. You can put your kids in a car in Winston-Salem and be home at night at 10:30 and put them to bed, but still feel you went to a festival. So that's it. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, John.
Oh, and that's some more of the families. Thank you.
Is there anyone else, anyone here who would like to speak on this item, for or against? Okay. Hearing none, then
Before the vote?
I will close the public hearing, and,
All right.
yes.
When I start to speak on this type of subject or make some comments, my trouble is condensing my thoughts because I've lived here my whole life. And I remember, I'm 60 now. I know I don't look it, but I am.
You look 70.
Dang it, I know. I'm speeding up. When I was, my father's first job was at Red Dot Grocery at the age 12. I remember using, or that whole west-southwest quadrant when it was totally different. I remember when it was booming with small manufacturing, thousands of jobs, lots of money. And I woe the day that we ever, and whatever one voice against it was, when we passed NAFTA. I hated the change in the business climate. I knew what it was going to do because it had already happened to our small manufacturing of textiles. So this is the areas that Mr. Stavrik spoke about didn't get to where they are overnight, and they won't go back like the way they were probably ever. But they will come back, and I want to address an article that was in the paper. I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee, and once this passed through us, it made it into the paper. And there's some people that are very upset that the city would use city funds to incentivize something like this. I understand that philosophy, and I think if you're over about 60, you probably may empathize with it too. But what else has changed, in my opinion, in my lifetime of work, is the business relationship between municipalities and business has changed. Whether I like it or not, it's changed. And if you don't do the incentivizing, which we didn't do at this level back then. I can promise you we didn't. But if you don't, other cities are. And if your state's not, other states are. Do I think it's a good business model? Not really. But I'm pragmatic enough to know that's what it is. And I'm proud of this council for the last 4 and 6 years if you ever hear Nito Cobain talk, long at all, he's going to tell you that they're planting seeds of greatness. Well, what this council and all other councils are trying to do with this business model we operate under is to plant seeds that will turn into something good. So it's good to see some life back in the South and the Southwest. Please know that that's been going on, but these things take some time, and we're fortunate to have people that are stepping up and are risking their money and their dream of making it better. So I've had the privilege of enjoying both these spaces. And I hope some of you will too. But sometimes we catch a lot of flack up here for some of these decisions. But, you know, if you don't step onto the playing field, then you're going to lose. So I appreciate what they do, and thank y'all for letting me rant for them. I hope I didn't go over 3 minutes.
Is anyone else? Floor's open.
If I can tag on to that, what Justin said, and having the two gentlemen come up about football, the economic and the business community has changed over the last 30 years, and we're mobile now. If we can't do it here, we can do it somewhere else. So I want you all to stay here. I don't want you to go somewhere else. Justin, I do not want you to take your business somewhere else. The businesses you've started are essential to our town. You both, Don and John, y'all have made, I mean, I can't speak too highly of your venues. John, you walked me through that space when it was, you know, when there was trash on the floor and there were vines growing through the windows and didn't even have windows in some places. So the transformation you've made in that space is phenomenal. So I'm grateful that you all are here, and I'm glad to incentivize whatever we can to keep you all here and make your businesses thrive and successful. So I will make a motion to approve 2023-458.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Councilwoman Peters. Any other questions or comments
I have a
regarding
comment.
the motion?
Yes.
Councilwoman
So
Peters.
I want to thank John Muldoon personally, because COHAB is a game changer. It is a game changer. Thank you for also recognizing that it's West End, not Southwest. It's, you know, right there close to each other, just a railroad track splits it. But what you've done in the West End, John, I mean, you were a renegade. You came and took a risk when there was nothing there. People are looking to you as inspiration, and I thank you so much for that. I remember early last summer, I took somebody there for the first time, and they literally stood in the courtyard and looked around and said, "We are not in High Point." And I said, "Yes, we are." So thank you for your commitment to High Point and for bringing, it's the coolest space in High Point right now, and you continue, your vision just continues to grow and grow and grow. And so thank you so much for that.
I'll just reinforce what you're just saying, Monica. I mean, you guys took a risk. You're putting your private dollars into an area. We get asked questions all the time. What are you doing in this area? What are you doing in this area of the city? And we don't necessarily. We support those like you who are doing that. And so I think we got to stand with you. Appreciate your investment. I've been there a bunch of times myself. Been at Dawn's place a bunch of times. It's beautiful. You've created a really cool space. You got a good eye, and I look forward to seeing you all continue to thrive in this city.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of approval of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Next item is 2023-469. This is a public hearing regarding resolution for Public Utility Regulatory Policy Act standards. Tyler, I see you coming. I barely could say that in one breath.
Good evening. So what I have for you tonight is on November 15th, 2021, the federal government signed into law the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which amended PURPA. PURPA is the Public Utility Regulatory Policies Act of 1978. Now, when they amended that, what it did was it added 2 new regulatory standards that each state regulatory commission or a non-regulated utility, such as the City of High Point, had to consider adopting 2 standards. Those standards were based on demand response policies, and the other was promoting the electrification of vehicles. So, as required by that standard, the city did put out a notice and asked for public comment. We received no comment back. we believe, and staff's recommendation, that we do already meet these standards that the federal government has asked us to consider. The first being demand response. So the city already adopted programs to promote demand response and demand flexible practices through commercial and industrial rates that reduce the electric consumption during periods of high demand. And as technology becomes available through AMI, which we're currently embarking on that project, we will continue to promote that. And we do have plans to have a residential TOU rate so that we can extend that to our residential customers. For the other, the promoting the electrification of vehicles, the city does own and operate 4 publicly available chargers, which are free of charge. And the city will continue to promote that measure, again, when we have our technological advance with AMI and as other technologies through EV charging become available. So we're asking to adopt that resolution that's in your packet, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, there's a public hearing. This is a public hearing, so is there anyone here who would like to speak regarding this item?
I thought they wanted to speak.
Okay. Anyone who'd like to speak? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll make a motion for approval of this item. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made by me and seconded by Councilman Jones. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next item is 2023-467, the Village of Florence Historic Marker.
And just, my name is Dave Fensel with the Planning and Development Department. And this is not a public hearing for the historic marker request, just to note that. We do have a request for another historic marker from the High Point Preservation Society for placement of for approval and placement of a historic marker for the historic village of Florence. And we do have a proposed location on the west side of Penny Road near the intersection with East Fork Road. This would be within the city of High Point's city limits, which is a requirement of our historic marker policy. The village of Florence represents an important site in terms of the mixed racial heritage that it possessed starting in the mid-19th century prior to the Civil War. A feature that was rare in Guilford County as well as the state. Our Historic Preservation Commission has unanimously recommended approval. They felt it met all of the minimum and relevant evaluation criteria, and staff also supports this request. I do have just a few pictures. This is a surviving building, the Florence Female Academy, which is on the eastern side of Penny Road near East Fork. This is unfortunately gone, but this was the old Rosenwald School in Florence. And then the Briggs House, which is still in existence on the west side of Penny Road. We do have a would follow the standards of our historic marker and be consistent with other historic markers that have been approved. This is just a representative picture of a historic marker. And then we do have a proposed marker description, which has been reviewed and approved or recommend approval by our Historic Preservation Commission. I'd be happy to answer any questions about this historic marker request.
Okay. Just one question. The Briggs House, can you go back to that slide?
Yep.
It's not any relation to our David, is it?
To who? Benjamin.
It's his house.
Okay, all right.
David Briggs.
And it's been in his family, yeah, since it was constructed. It's a Guilford County landmark as well.
That's right. Okay. Anyone, floor's open for comments or a motion?
Motion to approve the request.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve this item. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Now I'll open a public hearing for item 2023-460, City of High Point Zoning Map Amendment 23-23.
Yes, Mayor, City Council, Herb Shannon, Senior Planner with the Planning and Development Department. You have in your agenda packet a detailed staff report regarding the zoning request. I'll provide you a summary. This is zoning case 2323. It's a request by the City of High Point to rezone approximately 11.7 acres as part of our comprehensive zoning map amendment project. For those members of the public, the purpose of this project, which will probably go on several years, we're systematically going through the entire city, reviewing, evaluating the zoning in the city, identifying areas where the zoning is out of sync with or inconsistent with current land use policies, and removing improper zoning districts that may be a barrier to development. There are two areas for your consideration, one off of West Paris Avenue and one off of Bennington Street. The Part A off of West Paris Avenue is in the western central portion of the city, along the south side of West Paris, south side west of Main Street. And the proposal is to rezone 3 single-family zone parcels to the GB district. This is within a block bounded by Main Street, Paris, Idle, and Westchester. And this entire block was originally all residential dwellings. Beginning in the mid-1980s, there were expansion of zoning along Main Street and Westchester for commercial use, and that expansion encroached into this 2-block area to the point where by the year 2000, half that block was already rezoned and redeveloped for commercial use. Because of that change in 2000, the city adopted a change to the land use plan to designate this area for commercial use. There's only one node of residential left, that's that area you see highlighted, and the proposal is to rezone this area to the GB district to match the character in which this area has changed over the past 35 years. The remaining homes would become non-conforming uses. That is not unusual. With a non-conforming use, it can remain as a single-family residential use. That non-conforming status runs with the land, so if the property is sold, a new owner also has that non-conforming protection. So they can be continued as single-family dwellings, but this rezoning would allow that if in the future someone wants to come in, purchase these lots and develop it for commercial, the zoning's already in place. I would note that staff grants broad flexibility in dealing with non-conforming single-family dwellings. The only time that status would be removed is if the use ceases to operate as a residential use for 180 days. Some of the broad categories we take a look at, just because the home is vacant, we would not consider it non-conforming. As long as it's being actively marketed, or as long as the utilities remain on, they keep their non-conforming standard and the clock does not start ticking. The only times we really take a close look is if the building is demolished, or in the event there's a fire, if the building is no longer livable, they have 180 days to get a new building permit, and then that permit's valid for a year. So we try and offer flexibility that if the current property owners wish to keep it as single family, give them as much flexibility as possible, but also allow some flexibility that if someone does wish to expand commercial to this final node, they would not have to come through a public hearing process and zoning is in place. The second area that is being taken a look at is along Bennington Street. As you may recall, in your August public hearing, Mr. Shipwash approached you about rezoning this area. This was on our study list. It was about 2 or 3 years down the road. You granted staff the authority to push this up on the list and look at rezoning. This is a situation where you have a lot of the land south of West Market Center Drive is zoned for heavy industrial, but you do have some small nodes of residential neighborhoods in those areas. And this is one that along this west side of Bennington Street, it's almost all single-family dwellings. In reviewing historic aerial photos, I would say about 60 to 70% of those homes have been there since the 1950s, and the industrial uses just developed around them. As staff reviews more of these areas, we're going to look at, has the area just been chipped away to the point where it's really not a cohesive neighborhood? If that's the case, we're going to just recommend the zoning stay the same. But if it's still a cohesive unified area, staff will be bringing other areas like this for your consideration to rezone to single family to keep those areas viable as an affordable housing option. The land use plan has specific policies to provide a wide range of housing opportunities and to protect established neighborhoods. There is a builder that wishes to develop additional affordable housing on the undeveloped lots in this area. So staff is recommending this area along Bennington Street be rezoned from heavy industrial to the limited business district. That LB district allows maximum flexibility where you could do some commercial uses, you can do single family, you can do multifamily, you can do duplexes, so allowing a wider options of residential uses. I would note there are 2 lots that would become non-conforming. In the middle of this block, there's 230 and 236 Beddington. This area is already non-conforming, although the uses are permitted. The manner in which the site is developed does not meet current standards. There's a stream that runs through the middle of the site. In that area you see highlighted in blue, that's the flood zone area. Wherever there is a stream, since the early 1990s, our ordinance have required stream buffers, and you have an automotive use there that's in the stream buffer. Staff is not saying that use has to go away, it's just that they would become a non-conforming use. And if they cease to operate for more than 180 days, they would lose that non-conforming status. So for 230 Beddington, if this is rezoned limited business, that just becomes a non-conforming use and they can continue to operate. 236, it was previously an automotive dealership. Reviewing aerial photos in the late 1990s, that use ceased to operate. It's been more of just a storage area. So non-conforming status is nothing new for these 2 sites because if they were to cease operation, they could not redevelop now except for meeting the stream buffer requirements. In 236, they already lost their non-conforming status for automotive use in the early 2000s. So this item was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their September public hearing. The commission recommended approval by a vote of 7-0 and has forwarded to you a recommendation of approval. And they've also included for your consideration a consistency and reasonableness statement. Are there any questions on Area A or Area B that's under consideration for this evening?
I got a question for Herb. So at 230, so you're saying 236 has already not been used for a while, so that they would not be grandfathered into anything, correct?
Correct.
But the 230 address is currently being used. If it were to go 180 days or a change of use would also trigger that as well, correct?
Yes.
What would the changes have to, what change would have to be made if there was a change of use to make it compliant to that mid-90s regulation?
From the stream northward into the site, 50 feet would have to be an undisturbed area.
Undisturbed up to 50 feet.
So you could not have any disturbance or storage of vehicles in that area.
Okay.
But that takes up about the southern third of the site.
Correct. Okay. That's all I have.
Any other questions for staff? Thanks, Ms. Shannon. City's the applicant on this, so we don't need to hear from the applicant. Madam Attorney, Councilmember Johnson has a question regarding a possible conflict that he may have.
I pastor a church on Beddington Street, so I just wanted to, do I need to vote or not?
Pastor of the church that's included in the zoning map amendment, one of the parcels, is that right?
Not one of the.
Which one?
No, it doesn't have anything, it's on this street. I just want to
on
make
the
sure.
street.
So
No,
I'm good.
No, sir.
Okay. I'm good to vote.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
No need to excuse, if it sounds like you don't have a
I don't
direct
have any interest in it, no.
financial interest
No.
or anything. No.
Just wanted to make sure.
Thanks for disclosing that.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in regard to this item? Okay. Seeing and hearing no one, I will close the public hearing and I will make a motion for approval of this item and state that and I will adopt the consistency and reasonableness statement as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Councilman Jefferson. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Next item is, I will open the public hearing for Bricks and Beams LLC zoning map amendment 23-24.
Yes, this is a request to rezone a 6.5 acre parcel located along the south side of East Green Drive between South Centennial Street and Park Street. The request to rezone it from the light industrial district to the central business district. This is a general location of the site within the central part of the city. And this is our color-coded zoning map. This is the former location of the Slane Hosiery Mill, which I believe initially opened on this site in the mid-1920s. The western half of the site fronting along South Centennial Street is developed with a 150,000 square foot structure. The applicant's requesting rezoning from the light industrial district to central business district. They're proposing to renovate this facility. Slane Hosiery moved out of this facility earlier this year. They have their corporate headquarters now on West Fairfield Avenue. This site is up for sale. The applicant is proposing to renovate this former industrial use to support market showrooms with the potential of some year-round furniture sales activity, warehousing, distribution, and their corporate office. This block forms the eastern boundary of the showroom district as adopted by the core city plan and policies of the land use plan. Both those portions of the land use plan support central business district zoning for this area. Furthermore, as you can see, the southern portion of this block and just north of the right, the corner are already zoned central business district. So this is not introducing a zoning that's not already been established in this block. This is an aerial photo of this location, just down the block from City Hall. And there have been some questions regarding, is this in the showroom district or not? This is a map showing the showroom district, the area you see shaded in a light purple color. That is the showroom district as adopted by the core city plan in 2007. The areas that are crosshatched, those are parcels that currently are zone CB. And that is the site in question for your consideration this evening. It is within the showroom district, and you do have 2 parcels already in that block that have a CB district zoning. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this request at their September public hearing and recommend approval by a vote of 7-0. And they have forwarded to you in your cover memo a consistency and reasonable statement for your consideration. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Shannon. We'll now hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Mayor Wagner and members of council. My name is Beth Kuntz, and I'm an attorney with the law firm of Robertson, Hayworth, and Reese here in town. My address is 300 North Main Street in High Point, and I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Bricks and Beams, LLC. I thought the staff report was pretty complete, so I'm not going to add a lot except to emphasize that I do think this is a logical extension of the central business district. The other thing I would add is that I'm also an old High Pointer. Mr. Moore, I've got you by a few years. I won't say how many. And my biggest concern when I heard that Slane was relocating, I was really worried that we were going to have another empty factory building. And thanks to the Bricks and Beams folks and their plans for the facility, hopefully we won't have another building standing empty. So we would ask that you approve this rezoning request. We do have the design team from Bricks and Beams here tonight. Also, the principal of the company, Bricks and Beams, and Schwung Homes, is also here, and they can answer any questions that you might have that are specifically concerning their plans for the property. This is a little bit different than straight showroom. Schwung Homes, their location is currently on South Centennial, but they are leasing that, and their lease is up here within the next year, and they're going to have to relocate, and they want to remain in High Point. They want to locate their Schwung Homes North American operation. They want their corporate offices here. This facility is going to have a hospitality component, and really over half of the building is intended to be owner-occupied by Schwung. So again, if you need any details, the folks are here and they can answer that for you. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for the applicant? Thank you, Ms. Coons.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this item? Okay. Hearing none, I'll open the floor then, and
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Chris Williams. I had some questions when this item first came to me. I think the staff did a good effort in clearing some of my questions up, and it's around the market district. And before I forget, I do work for and more. That's my other job. Full disclosure, I do work for and more, but this issue, the issue that I had with it was not about what Bricks and Beans want to do with the space. It was a question about the market district lines, and that we've had some in the past that we've had to, clarify and deny because it was, the idea of the market district to begin with was because at one point we were busing, we had showrooms across the city. We had showrooms from here all the way to Lexington. And we were using resources to shuttle buyers across all that space. So the market district came into play to help, solidify the actual market area. And I see that this is actually in it, but I do have a couple of questions for staff on the mapping issue for me, okay? And my request, and I'm going to make a motion just to continue this until the next council meeting to get those discussions in with staff, and then we can move forward. But I do want to ask those questions. And I'm saying that because I think it's important that, one of the other elements in this is that we created it to help build the mixed-use district where our downtown is now. High Point in general lost its downtown some time ago, 2 showrooms. You had a Sears and all this other stuff downtown, that you would come, but then all that went away. Everything moved on the outskirts and malls and other places. And so in order to recruit, to build our downtown is one of the reasons why that market district was important. So I do make a motion just to continue this until the next council, very next council meeting, and to have a discussion with the staff.
okay, there's been a motion made. I believe it would continue the meeting till November 6th. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to continue this item to November 6th. Any discussion on the motion?
I make a substitute
Mr. Mayor,
motion.
Wait, I have
my
a
question
question
here.
first.
So I've just got a question perhaps for the applicant. Ms. Kuntz, you mentioned that they have a lease that's coming up on their existing space that's about to end. And I guess what I'm curious about is how the delay of this item, if it gets pushed to November 6th, if it has any potential impact on what you all need to do. I know we've got a market coming up, and then you also may have some particular issues in terms of construction and renovations. If we can just get some clarity from the Schwung team and from Ms. Kuntz, so that way we can understand if this 4-week delay would have a detrimental impact on you all or not.
Thank you for the question. Yes, sir, we would take the position that it would impact us because we are in full bore renovation and design mode right now. And as a matter of fact, demolition is planned to start very, very soon. Their lease ends in April 2024, and they've got to be out by then. And we've got a lot of work to do to convert this building, at least the first phase of it, to where Schwung is going to be able to use it. So it's, I understand, having some questions. I understand that, but it would be a setback. I'm not going denied.
And I have a comment, if I may, if you're done, Councilmember Jefferson. And, you know, in respect of Councilmember Williams being in that ward, that's his ward, and also his position with IMC, he and I had some conversations. I've met with the whole Schwung team, and I know their long-term plans for other areas of High Point as well. And I also, and, you know, Chris and I were able to talk about this, you know, I totally understand if it was just a showroom where there might be some, you know, heartburn, but, you know, only a small portion is really the actual showroom. It's going to be distribution, a restaurant, open year-round. It's already open year-round, you know, not only just to the trade, but just open year-round. So they've got the retail component, they've got the hospitality component, they've got the distribution component, and they've got also have the staffing component that is there year-round that can go and eat and drink at our facilities that are in our downtown. So I would make a counter motion that we not delay it and that we try to.
Well, I don't think we need a counter motion. You would just vote against his motion.
Oh, okay.
Well, can we just enter a substitute motion for approval?
You still wouldn't need to do that, I don't think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can do a substitute motion for immediate approval, and we would hear that first.
Do we need to hear do we need a vote on that?
That would in effect make his motion moot, so.
Can I ask a
Or
question?
we can just go ahead and vote on his motion and then see if it fails. Yes.
Councilman Williams, for your respect, for your concern and your questions, you mentioned, you used the word question, a couple of questions, I believe, and then you said time for discussion. And then you said they were really of staff. Is that anything that could be resolved here tonight if we took a 5-minute recess or?
No, I really wish it could, but not to get too much into the weeds of it. Let's just say, okay, I pulled a map of the market district last year, and the purpose for it was to show other interested small businesses that are not in High Point without downtown, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, take the overlay and put it over it, and that map is off. But I get, because the map that I had was showing the already zoned showroom spaces. I wasn't aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it drives a question that I just wanted to clear up with staff. It's gonna have to be with staff, and we can't sit here and do this tonight. That's the reason why I was saying to the very next council meeting. I'm not putting it off. And I would even ask a question of the applicant. When you talk about like the demolition orders and things like that, I don't think that this delay would stop that, would it? It would still, you'd still be able to move forward with those items. It's not it's just something that I need answered before we vote on this.
Mayor and Council, I'd like to introduce Ben DeLozier. He's a member of the Bricks and Beams design team and can give you, I think, a little bit more specific information that would answer your question.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben. Yes, good evening. I'm Ben DeLozier, fractional CFO, Bricks and Beams. Thank you for the opportunity to answer your question, Councilman Williams. Specifically, this Friday, we're planning to sign the construction contract with our general contractor, and we've secured financing in order to do that. But one of the key factors in the appraisal is the zone change that we're talking about right now. So if we were to take that designation out, very simply, we might not be able to appraise and then be able to put the investment into the building with the upfits in order to meet our timelines by April of 2024 to move the headquarters over. It's also notable that you may recognize Bricks and Beams. We've been investing a significant amount of dollars over the last several years into the 700 block of West Green, and that's along between Taylor and Grimes and West Green and the railroad track. And when we talk with Ms. Dunback, and we've heard from Don Switzer and John Muldoon, we've been very active in that space as well. And one of the things we're trying to do is invest as much as we can in High Point and stay local and stuff. But please take into consideration those investments that we've made along there, and we're continuing to do that. But we've found ourselves in a situation where this appraisal is very material to our plans, our timelines, and not just this location, but also the 700 block of West Green. It's all tied together. So, thank you.
Could I make a comment, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, so I was under the impression, but if we're talking about April, because when you said about a year, give or take, in regards to you guys having to move, but we're talking about April. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
We're talking about April, and we're talking about, you said Friday, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So my thing was giving Councilman Williams the opportunity, giving him the time to ask those questions. So have those questions been answered, or at least one of your questions?
Yeah, one of them has been, specifically with this overlay.
Okay.
And like I said, there's a couple of other ones that I prefer to discuss it with staff, and I'd be glad to share them after I've had those talks. But currently, no. But that's the reason why I'm just still requesting, because I understand the time frame. Trust me, I live with it day in, day out. Time frames with construction and the turnover for space, and I've been doing it for over 25 years, so I do understand it. And that's the reason. That was the reason why I pushed it to try to get it for the very next available council meeting. And I know, I'm so sorry, it's kind of a perfect storm where the actual market is stopping it from happening again this month. But that was my purpose, and still my purpose, just to ask that to get
Mr. Mayor,
the next one.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if I can chime in here, I think just given consideration of this timeline in terms of financing, financing right now, we recognize just the challenge that many businesses and folks are facing as they're looking to do development, and the fact that it seems this group has something lined up that is contingent on this rezoning. I think also, and I appreciate Councilman Williams sharing thoughts. I think the piece about transportation, what's interesting is that we've got showrooms all along that corridor right there on Centennial. And so I know there's stops that already go right past there. I don't anticipate that we'll expend any additional resources with this showroom going where it is. And so actually what I'd like to do at this point is make a substitute motion that we go ahead and approve this item tonight.
Okay, there's a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion for approval's been made, seconded by Councilwoman Peters. Any discussion on the motion to approve?
Yeah, I would just echo that. I think because we don't, it's not like we have council in 2 weeks. This will be a full month delay, and I hope that this council will take that in consideration, the cost that may be to their project. And I want anything you need to be done by April for April's market, so I'll support it.
One just point of order, Councilman Jefferson, in addition to making the motion, you also have to make a consistency and reasonableness statement.
I would also like to make the consistency and reasonableness statement as is indicated within the staff report.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, do you renew your second, Councilwoman Peters? Didn't you make the second?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any further discussion on the motion to approve? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And is there anyone opposed?
Nay.
Okay, I believe there was one no. Okay, that motion is approved, and the initial motion to delay is rendered moot by the approval. All right. Next item is public hearing, which I will declare open. Kumasi Management Services LLC, zoning map amendment 23-25.
Yes, this is a request to rezone approximately 14.2 acres from a conditional use light industrial district to a conditional zoning general business district to support reuse of a existing building, which is a church, to support a minor school use type. This site is located along Furniture Avenue in the southeastern portion of the city, near the intersection of Business 85 and Riverdale Road. That's a blow-up of that area in our color-coded zoning map. This site's part of a larger 60-acre area that was annexed and developed as a commercial subdivision in the late 1990s. You have, I believe, 5 existing buildings out there. The remaining undeveloped parcels are limited in their development capacity due to existing environmental constraints. The various parcels within this subdivision were developed with retail uses, retail furniture uses, but starting in the early 2010s, many of those uses closed, and those former retail uses were converted to various institutional uses. You have an existing school and several churches that have ended up relocating in this area. The zoning site in question is currently a church. That church is proposing to relocate to a larger facility, and they're working with the College Preparatory Leadership Academy, or the Point, to allow expansion of their school into this facility. The Point has an existing K through 12 school right there at the intersection of Riverdale and Furniture Avenue. It was the former Bulls facility. I believe they started operation there in the early 2010s. They expanded to include a gymnasium and additional classrooms. They're requesting rezoning to support conversion of this church facility to a STEM laboratory where they were looking at renovation to allow classrooms and laboratories for STEM-related studies for their elementary and middle school students. Included with this conditional zoning request are zoning conditions that are consistent with previous zoning approvals in this area. And staff has worked with them to develop conditions that typically with a school you would have on-site stacking and drop-off areas, but since this is associated with the existing school there, we work with them to develop a condition that they would not have to do that on-site because their students would go to their main facility and then would be bused or carpooled to this site, which is just a few hundred feet down the street for those STEM classes. There is a condition that if for some reason this is sold to another school, it's not associated with them, they would have a year to put in required stacking for on-site stacking. Key points that staff would note from the findings is that rezoning to support reuse of the existing building for a school has previously been supported in this subdivision. The applicant is carrying forward previously adopted zoning conditions for this area. And finally, the retail nature of this subdivision has changed, with 4 of the 5 previous retail uses now being used for various institutional uses. And the request to allow this reuse of this building for educational activities, staff found no evidence that would negatively impact adjacent property owners. So we are recommending approval of this request. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this at their September public hearing and recommended approval by a vote of 7-0. And they've included in your cover memo a consistency and reasonableness statement for your consideration. Are there any questions of staff at this point?
Any questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Is there someone here on behalf of the applicant who would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Takuma Johnson, co-founder and CFO of the Point College Prep. When we came to what was the old boys showroom about 8 years ago, that entire development was really desolate. And we were happy to bring traffic and vitality back to that corner, which is an entryway to the city. Since then, we've been able to add another building, as Mr. Shannon mentioned, a gymnasium and a high school. And we've done our best to beautify the area and make it representative of where the city wants to go. We believe that this expansion is consistent with the use of the area now. And we just appreciate your consideration of the measure and ask that you continue to allow us to be a partner with the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, sir. Anyone else like to speak on this item?
Good evening. My name is Matt McCarthy. I am the pastor of Vertical Church, which presently owns the building that the Kumasi Management Group, the Point Academy, is seeking to inquire. As was noted by my friend Takuma, essentially what you would be voting on would be consistent with what is already present there. In addition to that, I don't know what you know about that school, but I've been able to witness firsthand now for 5 years the growth of that school, the quality of the product that school is producing. And the reality, it is a charter school, but it's essentially would be considered like a Title I school. And so what this will provide this group is an amazing STEM laboratory. We have totally renovated the building, and it will be a first-class facility for them. But in addition to that, across the street from the church is some property that could be used, hopefully in the future, for some ball fields that would be much needed for that campus. So I trust that as you make this decision that you'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, I will then close the public hearing, and I'll make a motion for approval of this item and adopt the consistency and reasonableness statement as stated by, in the staff report.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second it. And what I'll also add as a comment, I'm thrilled to hear that piece about the athletic fields. We heard from someone earlier in public comment that right now we just don't have capacity in the city for everyone who wants to use our fields. And that's been a struggle, and I know that in the past I've worked with the Point and with our Parks and Rec to try to support some of that accommodation, but it's really tough. And that's a growing school. They've grown all the way from K-5 to K-8 to now K-12 and had their first graduating class just a few years ago. They were easily approved for their second go-round of accreditation by the state for another 10 years, and they just do exceptional work. And so anything we can do to support a great institution for learning, and also just a fact check for everyone out there, charter schools are public schools, just so in case folks were curious, a charter school is a public school, and they are serving so many young people in an exceptional fashion. Seeing it firsthand and also knowing what this can do to alleviate some of the capacity constraints that we have on some of our facilities. I think this is a home run and hope that we get to vote this in favor tonight.
Anyone else like to be heard on the motion? Okay. All those in favor of approval of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Good. Next item is a public hearing. I'll declare it open. City of High Point Text Amendment 23-03.
Yes, this next item is a proposed amendment to the Development Ordinance. Text Amendment 2303 proposes to amend the powers and duties of the Planning and Zoning Commission. In 2002, House Bill 263 was adopted. That would provide the ability for the High Point City Council by ordinance to delegate or assign authority to change the zoning classifications of property in the city to the Planning and Zoning Commissions with certain rights of appeal. The Planning and Zoning Commission is a citizens board made up of 9 High Point residents that review land development related cases. Members are appointed by the City Council. Except for street names change, which the City Council has already granted the Commission final authority on, all items that are reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission are reviewed. They make a recommendation, and that recommendation is forwarded to City Council for a final decision. This text amendment, which was initiated by City Council, proposes to amend the Development Ordinance to give that authority for certain zoning cases to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The general concept is that fairly straightforward cases that aren't very controversial, they would go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and if there are really no objections, it's approved there, saving developers time. I would note that per the North Carolina General Statutes, there are still going to be certain cases that you would have to hear. Council must decide on annexations, special use permits, development agreements, and land use plan amendments, and text amendments. A lot of times, those cases are associated with rezonings. So the ordinance that's proposed, if you have a case, zoning case that's associated with any of those items, it would be the current process where you go to Planning and Zoning Commission, they make a recommendation, and it's forwarded to City Council. That is designed to try and avoid any situation of split decisions. For example, if you have a zoning that's associated with an annexation case, We don't want a situation where P&Z, focusing solely on the rezoning alone, makes a recommendation of approval, but then the annexation, which must come to council, gets denied. So we're trying to avoid those split decision type situations when you have zoning cases associated with those items. Included in your package, we have a summary sheet, and there are about 17 sections, I believe, to this ordinance. Although the concept is very straightforward, the zoning process touches a lot of sections of the ordinance. So we had to go through all those various sections and make sure this change is in alignment. So sections 1 through 3 deals with amendments of the tables as far as granting who has authority to do what. Section 4 updates the citizen information meeting requirements. Section 5 amends the submittal section as far as dealing with appeals. Currently, that section deals with appeals that goes to the Board of Adjustments. We're adding a section in that someone who may disagree with the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision can appeal to the City Council. So we amended that section to make sure it's clear you have an appeals that deals with Board of Adjustment items, but then this specific appeal for zoning goes to City Council. Section 6 deals with public notice standards for general zoning, zoning map amendments, and plan development zoning. Section 7 and 8 clarifies the procedures. While we were going through this process, we had noticed there are some slight differences between how various boards handle items. I think that's just due to changes over the years. So while we were doing this, we wanted to have the 3 major boards, the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Board of Adjustments, Historic Preservation, and City Council, have similar voting procedures of when they have to recuse themselves and so forth. Section 9 deals with the appeals section also as far as the process and standards of an aggrieved party. And section 10 through 17, that's where we're going through the local historic district, zoning map amendment section, conditional zoning section, just to make sure that language is consistent with all of those various process. This is a quick little flow chart of the process as envisioned by this text amendment. You have your Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. The Planning and Zoning Commission will make a decision. If it is approved by a 2/3 majority, it can be finalized unless there is an appeals application submitted within 15 days. So, for example, over the past several years, we've been bringing forward a lot of the comprehensive zoning map amendment. Staff does a lot of early notices. There are really no members of the public that are objects. So in those type of situations or cases from the developer, if there are no major issues, no one wants to appeal it, it's done, the zoning is complete. If it is appealed, there's a 15-day deadline. If the case is approved by less than a 2/3 majority, it automatically gets forwarded to City Council. If a request is denied, it may be appealed. City Council has the ability to appeal within that 15-day time period at a meeting by a majority vote of council. And when we talk about appeal, we use the language that aggrieved party. Basically, that's anyone could appeal a decision to City Council. They fill out the application, they pay the application fee. We would go ahead and do the ads that notes City Council public hearing, redo the mail notice, repost the sign. It comes to City Council, and you would look at that request and say, yes, we agree with the Planning and Zoning Commission decision, or no, we don't, and you get a chance to make that final decision.
Can I stop you right
Yes,
there?
sir.
Since I have a question on that. I didn't see in here where aggrieved party was defined, but I didn't have time to read everything word for word. Is there a statutory reason that an aggrieved party is anyone?
That was an issue we wrestled with, and staff and the city attorney may want to chime in, but we came down to the decision to keep it open, and that if City Council wishes to take that into consideration, they could. We just did not feel comfortable at the staff level saying you're not an aggrieved party. For example, there was some discussion that you have to be one of the people notified within 300 feet. Well, you could have a situation where someone in a budding subdivision is 310 feet. They're still impacted. Are they an aggrieved party? Or you could have someone from Charlotte appeal, and that could be a situation where council said, you know, you're really not right next to it, or are you really impacted? But staff was of the opinion that council should make that determination, and that aggrieved party can present their case to council rather than staff trying to make that decision. I hope that helps you out some.
Okay, that answers my question,
Okay.
but I'm not real happy about it. Okay. Continue, Mr. Shannon.
This item was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their August public hearing. There were questions raised about the citizens information meeting process, so it was continued to the September meeting. Staff in the city attorney's office went through the ordinance again and made some clarifying statements. If you had a chance to go through the ordinance just so it was easy for the Planning and Zoning Commission to see the changes, you see some language highlighted in yellow. That's the difference between what went to Planning and Zoning Commission and what went to them in September and what you see now. I would note there was concerns about the fact that staff had proposed some changes to the citizens information meeting process. Staff is trying to provide an opportunity for as much information as possible to be made to the public. If this text amendment is approved, you have a situation where instead of there being 2 public hearings for comment, it could potentially only be 1. So we are just trying to get as much information out to the public as possible for them to contact the applicant or contact staff. As you're aware, the public hearing is not always the best time to ask 20 questions. So we're just trying to get as much information as possible out to the public to review cases. Far as changes that were made between the August meeting and the September meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission under the Citizens Information meeting, we are clarifying that you could do a virtual meeting, that a description of the proposed development is to be provided to those property owners, a draft concept plan, and that could be an actual plan, or they could verbally describe during a telephone conversation, or at the meeting, they can describe their plan. But the intent is just trying to give the public as much information as possible. This is not a binding plan. You have seen in the past what we call conditional zoning plan or binding plans. That is up to the applicant if they wish to offer a binding plan, but what staff is proposing during the Citizens Information meeting, note to the public your proposed use, note a plan, understanding that things change. This is not a binding plan. We're not locking you down, but just to provide as much information as what's being proposed, because a lot of times when you, we do this every single day. We can look at a piece of land and say, okay, we understand it. Not all members of the public are used to that, so having a plan provides some more information during the citizens information meeting process as to what is being proposed. And we say this all the time when plans are thrown up on the screen, hey, this is illustrative, this is just a general idea, it is not binding, and things do change. Finally, the text amendment clarifies, as I know, the procedures for voting so that it is a similar legal process between City Council, P&Z, Board of Adjustments, and Historic Preservation Commission. So staff is recommending approval of this item for your consideration. I would note staff will develop an appeals application. Our goal is for this to become effective January 1st to allow, of 2024, to allow time to develop the application. At this point, we did not want to present a budget or amendment for you. So as part of the 24-25 budget, we'll include a fee schedule for this process. Currently, for Board of Adjustments, the appeals fee is $300. We will present at the time you do your budget for next year to specifically note appeals for zoning related, so it's real clear what's BOA, what is P&Z. So just want to throw that out to you also. Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of this request by a vote of 7-0, and they have forwarded to you a reasonableness and consistency statement for your consideration. It's a lot of information. It's a brief overview, and we'll be happy as best as possible to address any questions you may have.
Mr. Mayor, if I can jump in on this.
Yes.
So one, I want to go to the point that you brought up earlier regarding aggrieved party. Mr. Shannon, I appreciate what you all mentioned regarding council's discretion. I think what particularly concerns me about allowing any aggrieved party to then come before a full body of council in a public meeting, and then council's discretion to decide if we want to hear them, I almost wonder if it's not more efficient and gets the same exact job done to do it the opposite way, in which we restrict the aggrieved party to that 300-foot area. And then if there's someone at that 310 feet, they can always reach out to a council member and say, hey, I know I'm not within 300, but I've got major issues with this. I'd like to have this appealed, but I can't apply. That allows one of us as council members to have discretion via email, phone call, in between meetings, to then say, hey, talk to our peers, I want to bring this back up because of the issue, as opposed to someone being, like the mayor said, somewhere on the opposite side of town or anywhere else, and then appealing, and ultimately at that point, council having to hear it as an official thing. So I do have a little bit of concern with that and consternation. I would prefer it be within that 300 feet. I think the next point here is regarding the citizens' information meeting, and I recognize what you say here, which is ultimately, if you end up taking away a public hearing, how do we ensure that the public has time to get information? I think a couple points that were brought up in some of the conversations are pieces that I think are pretty poignant here. I think ultimately, if folks end up having real issues with a plan and a developer does not take time to do citizen engagement on that, council is going to know that. And if everyone's against that plan, it's not in the developer's best interest to not get buy-in from the public on some projects. And so I think if you know that it's in their best interest to get that buy-in, I think they'll make the accommodations to do a conversation. However, requiring it, we know that sometimes they have that meeting and no one shows up. And so folks have already booked time on their calendar, they've flown in, or they've done whatever they need to do for it, and it just doesn't feel efficient. I think that also, in regards to the concept plan, what you're talking about here is that even though we're not holding them binding to a concept plan, I think the issue is that, one, it still costs money to make a concept plan, and you're really making it arbitrarily because of a rule. Things always change. As financing changes, as you get into the project, cost of materials goes up, cost of labor goes up, things will always change. And so I want to be sensitive to that fact, because ultimately, as people are looking to do projects, and we already know what's being squeezed on one side is density, because no one wants to see their neighborhood disrupted. If they're already going to have to be squeezed potentially on density and lose some money in the project that way, I don't think we need to be squeezing money out on things that could feel a bit arbitrary. I hear your point about, is our public hearings the best time to ask questions? My hope is that they are. My hope is that people do feel comfortable when they come in here for a public hearing, and that they'll know council will hear them if they make those questions, and that the developer is going to show up and answer those questions, not only in front of them, but also in front of this entire governing body. And so honestly, where I stand, and Mayor, I don't know where everyone else is on this, but personally, I love to see a grief party shifted, and if it's not 300 feet within that area that you all want to look at something else, then I'm willing to have that conversation. And then also, I'll be willing to support this adjustment, but I couldn't support this part as it stands right now with regards to the citizens information meeting, the requirement of the concept plan, the requirement of doing that meeting regardless of what the interest or consternation is from the public.
Any other questions or comments from staff?
If I can follow up on that, you say it's expense, to lose that meeting, to have plans sooner. You say it's expense. I've been to 3 meetings in the last week with builders, home builders. It's actually thousands of dollars of expense. It's not a small price. It's $5,000 to $10,000 of extra expense up front to have those plans. So really, that's the one I am most opposed to. I don't like aggrieved. I'm with the mayor on that one. That one's so broad. Facebook makes people do weird things. I don't really want somebody coming here from Colorado to appeal one of our decisions, and it leaves it a little bit too open. But to your point, having to have so much information right up front is extremely, it's a lot of money for the developer to have to put out up front.
Any other questions for staff?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Continue the public hearing.
Yes.
Yes.
Obviously, we haven't done operated this way before. When did we submit for local legislation to make this change?
I will believe it was last year or late 2021.
Been a while.
Yes.
So it took a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of expense to get it done at the state level and at our level. When was the last development that came before us, y'all help me out with my memory, where we were presented a case and were not told about a public meeting that they had? I can't remember.
I can't remember one offhand, but we do hear that from the public. Hey, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. We try as much as possible, mail notice, legal ad, posting sign to get the word out to people.
I'm talking about the actual developer that stood up before us and a representative and said there was no public meeting. Or just skimmed over it.
I do not recall, but we've had the citizens information meeting as part of the ordinance since 2017.
So it's been there.
Yes.
Okay. And this concept plan, is that engineered to scale? Does it have to be engineered to scale?
We're not looking for full-blown 100% engineering plan. I would think it should be to some scale, but that is extremely, we're looking at that very broadly. You know, if someone submits something that's not necessary to scale, we're not going to say, nope, that's not it. We're just trying to provide opportunity for the public to have as much information as possible. So we're not scrutinizing this like we would our typical TRC review.
Okay. Well, we were requested to pursue this avenue, and every council I've ever been a part of has strived to be very business friendly. And that was the intent of this whole process. So if this is passed, it can be amended at any time, just like a budget, right?
Yes. And anytime as you've seen before, when there are major amendments, they're not uncommon to have tweaks or clarifications. But if council has concerns as to how the process is working, you could always bring forward a staff, we want you to take a look at this or take a look at that, add to it, subtract to it, as the process goes along.
Well, I think we have a very good relationship with the builders and developers in our community, and I know every member, I'll speak for you, and you can speak up against me if you disagree, wants it to be as smooth, cost-effective, and transparent, and done as quickly as possible. So I would hate to see us move it this far, and it is a complex thing. And I think there's only a few small points that we're having heartburn over. And I've had the privilege of serving and voting on several budgets through the years, and I've never voted for one budget that I agreed with everything in it.
And I would just note, in looking at this is not something staff took lightly. As planners, especially as AICP certified planners, we have a duty to the public. That includes the business and building community. That includes the adjacent property owners and citizens in general. So we did not take lightly these changes, and we're trying to, as our duty as certified planners, trying to serve the general public in way what the developer is doing, information that the public can receive, to try and get a fair and equal balance.
Mr. Shannon, question. In terms of process, you just kind of led me into my question. In terms of the process of getting input from the builders community for this final iteration, how much direct input did you get from the builders community? Because it seems to me like I think there's to Councilman Moore's point, I think there's a few touch points here that probably could have been avoided had there been some communication prior to the deliverance of this final draft. Is that something that staff is open to? I know that the building community would be open to that as well. Because to me, I look at this as like, if we're gonna address the public, we have to get input from the public. the building community should be included as well.
This was a very difficult text amendment, trying to catch all the moving parts. We were up late till the day before our deadline, trying to get things done and cross-referencing items. Once we had a completed package, we did forward that completed item to the building community. But there were constant changes back and forth. There was a previous staff member, Mr. Andrews, who had initially took the lead on that. When he had left, I jumped in to try and usher it through because I know this was a key concern of council. What we did not want to do is submit something to the building community, and then there's a change, and there's another change. We wanted to, as best as possible, give them the final product. So once we completed our staff report, once we completed the ordinance, knowing that we were up against a deadline from directions from council to get this through, we did forward them the final draft. When it was continued from Planning and Zoning Commission and the city attorney's office and staff went through everything again and made changes, when we made that change, finalized everything, we forward that then to the to Trebeck.
Yeah, I just know from other aspects of my career, if you're going to create a policy that's going to specifically affect someone, it may be a better point of practice to also have them at the table in the crafting of these policies. I think you can cut down on some of those back and forths when you have that input directly. So hopefully in the future, as we get to that point, we can have a little bit more input directly in the crafting of policies to speed up the process.
Am I missing something here? Did the Trebeck community and staff not communicate since the time it was last at Planning and Zoning and got delayed?
There were several emails as far as concerns that they had, but staff focused on the concerns that were raised at the P&Z public hearing and tried to address them. Understand we did not address everything that they wanted, but we tried to clarify what was the intent.
Any other questions with staff before we move on in the public hearing? Thank you, Mr. Shannon.
Thank you.
Okay, it's a public hearing. The floor is now open for comments for or against. Ms. Stalder, I figured you'd be first.
Thank you. Yes, I'm first. My name is Judy Stalder. I live here in High Point at 1012 Wellington Street. I'm here tonight representing Trebeck, the Triad Real Estate and Building Industry, a coalition of over 90 land development industry companies working here in the Triad. Trebeck members support the text amendment 23-03, excluding the changes proposed to 2.3.3D, the citizen information meeting process. Trebeck supports all the changes proposed to empower the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we support the current regulations that govern the citizen information meeting. However, the proposed changes to citizen information meetings remove the flexibility that the ordinance currently offers. The proposed changes tell you how to conduct a meeting. These are meetings that we regularly do. It's really feels like micromanaging. The proposed changes also completely remove any flexibility from the ordinance. That flexibility is providing an explanation if you do not conduct a meeting and allowing an application to be considered regardless whether a citizen information meeting is conducted. Those flexibility clauses provide for creativity in cases that require a different approach. They allow a project to move forward even if there are holidays or other events that interfere with the timing of the case. I had a case last January that had already been delayed for a couple of years for a whole bunch of reasons, including COVID. But with the timing of that request, my citizen information meeting, according to this ordinance, would have had to been between Christmas and the first week of the new year. We had our meeting toward the end of that first week of the new year, which meant if there had not been that flexibility in the ordinance, the expansion to the Ralph Lauren campus would have been delayed again. And then there's always the very real possibility that in some cases you just don't need a meeting. In Winston-Salem and Forsyth County, they have very straightforward requirements. Nearby property owners must be contacted if the zoning is within 500 feet of residentially zoned property, and it must be reported 8 days before the first public hearing. In Greensboro, a nearby jurisdiction that has an empowered Planning and Zoning Commission, nearby neighbors must be contacted if they're within 750 feet of residentially zoned property, and the report submitted within 2 days of the first public hearing. Guilford County also has an empowered Planning and Zoning Commission, and they leave all the details to the developer. Trebic has always been willing to meet with staff and discuss any problems they've identified with the development process and work as partners to find viable solutions. In fact, Trebic coordinates regular partnering sessions with staff. We have one scheduled for Thursday. We coordinate that through the city manager's office, so there's ample opportunity for the staff to share any issues they've encountered, any plans that they have coming up. We were not made aware of any complaints about the current citizen information ordinance. Now, as many of you know, Trebic has advocated for the Planning and Zoning Commission to have this authority for many years. You may remember meeting with Marlene Sanford to hear about it after the last election. Shortening the process is business friendly. However, shortening the process should not be a trade-off. If more requirements are added, especially requirements that aren't warranted, there's no gain here. Trebic members ask that you approve text amendment 23-03, excluding the changes to the citizen information meeting process. And I was very happy to hear all of you talk about how you wanted to be business friendly and to talk about the risk that business people take. And our developers take those risks all the time. They sometimes have hundreds of thousands of dollars in a project for years before they ever see a return on their project. So thank you for listening to me tonight.
Ms. Dollar, I have a question. Just to clarify, is Trebic's objection the requirement to have the meeting or the notice and documentation that must be brought to the meeting? Our opposition is to any changes. We are fine with having citizen information meetings. We are fine with giving a report after we have those meetings and getting it to staff. We want the flexibility that's in there now that is there and struck through in your packet. We want that flexibility to stay in. We're fine with how it is now. And I dare say that most developers have those meetings. Now, I've had some where nobody shows up, and it's usually in cases where it's surrounded by commercial or industrial development. Okay. Any questions for Ms. Dollar?
Can you say the number of that amendment so I can pull it out for a motion?
2.3.3D. That's in section 4.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item?
Good evening. I'm Tom Terrell, 529 West Parkway Avenue in High Point. I am not a Trebic member. My law firm is not a Trebic member. I'm not sure if that needs to be stated. So I'm really here speaking for myself. I do support also shortening the process. It does make sense. Other cities and counties that do it, it works. If you remember, I was here 2 weeks ago for Phillips Funeral Home. Had we had those rules in place, Mr. Phillips would be 1 month closer to groundbreaking. And when you're a small business and you're having to put your money at risk and you need to expand, a month can make a difference. And this makes us more friendly to them. But as Judy was just up here, I too am here to oppose changing the rules that are, actually, it's not the rules, this is a law. We are proposing to adopt a law governing neighborhood meetings to make them a little more complicated, make them a little more costly, make them less flexible, adding new requirements, and without any identifiable reason that I have yet to hear that's rooted in the process, where neighbors have come forward to say, this does not work, where planning and zoning or council has heard complaints that say our current ordinance does not work. Years of experience doing what we have done suggest that the way we do it does work. The very first time I spoke in this chamber was in 1987. The podium was over on that side of the room. I was a cub lawyer. I was doing a variance request for a man named Cooper James, who was developing the shopping center where the Big Lots is right now. As you go up Eastchester, and it's at the corner of Eastchester and Ski Club. Didn't know what the Board of Adjustment was, didn't know what a quasi-judicial proceeding was. I had no idea what a variance was. But in the intervening 36 years, a funny thing kind of happened, and I expanded my land use and zoning practice to 4 states, mainly 3, but technically to 4. I have been in over 400, really don't know how many, but over 400 cities, counties, towns, hamlets. I was in Lumberton for a hearing just this morning at the Robeson County Board of Commissioners. Coming back, I had a call from the mayor of this place called Calypso. I'm guaranteeing nobody here knows where Calypso is. It's got about 400 citizens there. But the point is, I have been able, it's given me the opportunity to see other perspectives of how other cities, other governments do land use. And I can tell you from my experience that the vast majority, and by vast I mean high 90%, do not have any rules, any laws, any ordinances governing how you do neighborhood meetings, or that you have to do neighborhood meetings. And of those governments that do have some kind of requirement, very few of them, the number even dwindles, where they tell you when to have them, where to have them, what to give out to citizens, how you report back. Judy used the term micromanaging. I thought that was actually a very good term. I want to leave you with this thought. High Point has not had, over the decades, a good reputation as a place that's friendly to do business. I have seen this because I practice here, but I've also been practicing in a broad footprint. But we should never forget some of the most egregious examples. To me, one of the worst was Brown Truck Brewery. I don't know if y'all know this story. They were not my client, but Brown Truck, we were trying to build, we were trying to put investments in our downtown to bring people down, but they tried for months and months and months to get the proper permitting to put a brewery. Everybody around us, all across the landscape, had breweries, but we had a person or people in our staff who said, well, we interpret the state laws differently. And it was just a no, it was indifference. And they had to go on their own around the city to the state. And of course, that's not the correct interpretation. We almost lost them. And now it's one of the most populous places, especially in warm weather, where people gather on our main street. In 2014, it cost us close to $500,000 to have one of the world-renowned neo-urbanist urban designers, Andres Duwani, come here, and after a week with his team, he did a report out at the Hayworth Center at High Point University, and among the things he reported was that all the people who had spoken to him, his team, were talking about how hard it is to do business in High Point when you are with the private sector. So what I ask you is, let's don't return. When Dwayne was here, we actually started to do some things that made it better. We changed our attitude. It was a turning point. Let's not go back to being indifferent. Let's not go back to adding more rules. Let's not go backwards. Let's keep going forward. And these rules, as they are written, as they currently exist, give folks like me, Judy, others, the flexibility that we need. And we do it right. And if you think that we've abused that process, if you think that we are not taking this communication seriously, hold it against us. You have the freedom to turn it down or to postpone it. But I will tell you, we need that ability to decide in the context what is required, how to do it, when to report, what we need to do. And this business of a precise number of days by which it's postmarked and a precise number, these are just all traps. Makes it harder. Thank you for considering keeping the rules as they are.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item?
Mr. Mayor, just before we transition to our next part, I know we've got a number of our commissioners here from the P&Z Commission, and not that I want to put any of you all on the spot, but would love to know if you all have any insight, and if you don't have any, that's fine too, but it sounds like where this council is going is a little different than what you all unanimously decided in your meeting. And so I want to make space, because I know you all have spent a lot of time discussing this. I know staff has spent a ton of time deliberating this. And so I want to give that just due, if you will, to be able to hear all sides of it.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kim Lyman. I'm with Impact Property Solutions, 5590 Garden Village Way, which is a Greensboro address, but we do a lot of business in High Point. And I just wanted to bring some perspective as not a developer, but as a subcontractor who provides to the development community kind of the overarching effect delays have, not just for the developers, but for every single person that they do business with. Especially during times of COVID, a lot of our products went up 42%, which meant we were contracted to do flooring for multifamily communities, right? Thousands of square feet of new flooring for new homes for people to live in, and we had to do it at a loss because we had contracted a rate to do their flooring. But by the time they finally got to put the project together and they finally got to start digging into the ground, our rates had gone up, our labor rates went up. So it's not even that we didn't make as much of a profit. I mean, we lost thousands of dollars. So every delay doesn't just affect developers, it doesn't just affect potential homes for people to live in, but it affects the people that live in your communities too, as employees and subcontractors of all of these other companies. I mean, we're just one subcontractor. You have to think about the people doing the cabinets and the paint, the plumbing, the electric, and this is affecting all of those different businesses. So it's not just the developer that this decision affects, and it's not just the people that are waiting for homes. We all know that housing is such an issue, and we need more homes as quickly as we can get them. So it's really just wanted to bring to your attention the overreaching effect that this has on so many different people on such a vast level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. I have another question for staff regarding the appeals section. In the appeals of P&Z zoning decision section, it states that City Council may, by a majority vote taken within 15 days of P&Z's decision, authorize Planning and Development Director to file a written notice of appeal to the P&Z decision. So that is that's a mechanism by which City Council can pluck and appeal something if we want to get a look at it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why was 15 days chosen?
We initially had looked at a 15-day time period, and when we looked at, okay, what if council wants to do an appeal, we were trying to keep the same timeline. We had looked at, okay, do we want to make it 30 days? We were thinking, okay, that may be too long. So we kind of settled on 15 days. That will give us time to get the application in, make sure it's complete, then go forward with our required legal advertisement times so that in the following month, your second meeting of the month, that can be reviewed by you.
What if there isn't a second meeting in the month?
Then it would get pushed back.
Okay.
But we kind of worked backwards from the advertisement deadline to come up with that 15-day time period, because we're looking, at making sure the public is aware, hey, yeah, we know you heard this at P&Z, but an appeal's been submitted and we do require legal ads, notice, and signposting. So we kind of worked our way back from that second meeting of the following month.
If that were, I'm going to propose something to you, and y'all tell me if you think this is a bad idea. I'm open to criticism. If we were to amend that to say that the council may, by majority vote taken, at any time up to or including the next regular council meeting, would that cause major problems?
Well, keep in mind, for example, P&Z met last Tuesday. Today is your next regular council meeting. That's less than 15 days. Is that what you're referring to?
But if you could say, if I said at any time up to and including the next regular council meeting, but in any event not less than 15 days.
Right off the top of my head, I can't see any downside. You still have that
My point
time
is
period.
that I don't want us to get in a situation, there's several times a year where we skip a meeting.
Yes.
And I don't want us to have to come in and schedule a special meeting in July when half the council's at the beach, to come in and do an appeal.
Yeah.
So that would allow us, in those months where we skip a meeting, that it would allow us to be able to do that without having to schedule a special meeting.
I would have no objections to that. We were just trying to be consistent with what the public has, but we do understand you do have those situations, so.
I'm just trying to help the clerk.
Yeah. But could you repeat that just to make sure we're
It
clear?
would be at any time up to and including the next regular council meeting, but in any event, not less than 15 days.
But not less. So then a situation when a meeting is canceled or a holiday would be that following meeting where council has that ability to issue an appeal. On face value, staff has no objections. It just kind of delays that time period where the
Well,
applicant.
actually, right now, it says within 15 days.
Yeah.
So if planning and zoning hears it and we hear it 6 days later, we can appeal it 6 days later, right?
Yeah, tonight's an unusual situation. Typically, this item would have been on the second meeting of the month. But we don't do that because basically, I'm here till midnight Tuesday drafting items.
Maybe my wording is not good
Yeah.
because it could require us in this situation to wait for the next meeting.
Yes, and that would be however you wish to draft that. If you wish it that way, we could just note that in our procedures, if you desire something like that. That we would like, say, for example, I always work with the city clerk to try and get the calendar days for city council up front, and we do a yearly calendar of deadlines. And when we have those situations where, you got a meeting
maybe-
last Thursday in June
maybe-
and 4th of
maybe you
July,
say-
we could note that, hey, the public has 15 days, but council has to their next regular meeting.
Yeah.
Is that the goal that I'm hearing, is to make sure to allow for a council meeting to be held if council were to wish?
Yeah, I just don't want to put us in a position where we have to call a special meeting to come in here and appeal a case because that 15-day deadline is going to run before the next regular meeting.
We can work on that with the wording to figure out what makes the most sense.
But I do want us to have the flexibility in the event that P&Z meets prior to 15 days before us, that we could appeal it at that next regular meeting.
Right.
So maybe the wording needs to be that it can be anytime up to including the next regular council meeting.
Or maybe it's just too.
But not less than 15 days.
So leave that you're agreeable to the 15 days for the public, and for the council's appeal right, you would want to at least have the next available council meeting, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, I think.
I don't think that, I think if the council wants to appeal something, we should go on and do it. You know, I don't want it unlimited where 3 months later we're going to, you know, I mean, there's got to be a deadline. But I just don't want us to put us in a situation where we have to schedule a special meeting and try to corral everybody at a time like furniture market or the July meeting we usually skip, that kind of thing. So that, and I'm just trying to make sure that I've got the correct wording.
Mayor, from listening to the conversation, it almost seems as if a specific date reference for council appeal should be removed and just give them the flexibility, give council the flexibility to where at the next.
Yeah, the next regularly scheduled council meeting.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
That way you're not tied to a specific time frame.
So your opportunity.
So my initial wording was probably the best at any
I would
time
take
up to
out
and
the
including the
non-resident.
next regular council meeting.
And stop there.
And so the next available meeting would be when you all would make your decision to appeal or not.
The next regularly scheduled council meeting. So if we scheduled a special meeting already, you're limited to what is in the notice for that meeting. We wouldn't be able to do it at that meeting. We'd have to do it at the next regularly scheduled council meeting. And in most cases, that's going to be at least, y'all meet on Tuesday still?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's going to be at least 6 days.
It's the fourth Tuesday of every month that planning
Yeah.
and zoning meets.
Yeah, so that's going to be at least 6 days or 13 days, unless we're taking the month off, or council meeting off, then it's going to be later in the month.
Right. So keep the 15 days for the members, the
Well,
agreement.
I'm just talking about amending that one section, that one sentence, which only applies to council.
We'll remove the days out of that section.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the 15 days.
Any of the other ones.
Preceding sentence, just the 15 days as it applies to council.
Mayor White, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I don't feel like this is ready, and I feel like we've had a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails stating that, you know, they would like council's attention on this matter. I think we should either we table this or and plan some type of I don't know, work session, but make sure some of the people who spoke in opposition to this, Ms. Lyman, Mr. Terrell, Ms. Stalder, are there, and that we have an open meeting where we can openly discuss some of their frustrations with this, so that we come down with something that it doesn't cost us millions of dollars of economic development because we do something that developers see as a hindrance. I'm assuming this, if we were to make a motion that would get this something passed tonight, but still give us room to finalize those things that they have a disagreement on or opposition to, could we entertain a motion to adopt TA-23 or TA-23-03 P&Z hearing ordinance, excluding the changes to 2.3.3.d shown in section 4, 7, and 8 in the attached proposed ordinance. And that way we get something passed tonight, but give us time to meet with Trebick and all the people who stand to gain or lose in this situation, and let their voices be heard, and make sure council, if we have to do a special meeting, what do we need to do? I think they deserve to be heard, and I'm not satisfied that this is the right venue to have that discussion. So I'd like to make that motion.
Yeah, and Mayor, I think the way Mr. Shannon lined it up is that staff, I mean, and I think City Manager said this too, there was going to be a considerable amount of deliberation before this was official anyways, because we haven't determined the fee that we're going to charge folks and a number of things. And so I think to that point, there's still deliberations that have to happen. I think the point being made here is that we don't want those deliberations to be made, and every single time you come back to council, we can't find that there's been a conference between our staff and those within our development community.
Councilman Jones made a motion. I'm not exactly sure. It sounds like you're making a motion to continue this, but.
Well, no, I think we either continue it, that'd be one option, but initially my first thought would be to make a motion to approve this, excluding the changes to 2.3.3.d with regards to the information meetings, neighborhood meetings.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I'm going to speak, actually. I would rather we go ahead and pass it tonight. I think we've got a good grasp on maybe there are only a few small changes that need to be made, and I don't see the point in going all the way back through P&Z again, which we would have to do, I believe. if we're going to, because we adopt it tonight and then we want to go back and make more changes to it, it's going to have to go through the whole process again, back to P&Z?
It does not have to go to P&Z unless you specifically remand it back to them.
Okay, well, that's fine. I was under the impression text amendments had to go through that whole process.
Not unless you specifically remand it back to P&Z for more deliberation.
But if we approve it tonight and then we want to make changes at the next meeting, doesn't it have to go back through the whole process?
If you, say, for example, the motion, as I understand it, approve text amendment 2303 with section 4 being excluded,
Yeah.
and with the change you propose far as the next regular meeting or up to 15
He
days.
didn't mention that in his motion.
Okay, you didn't mention that. So
Yeah.
the motion was just to adopt it with section 4
Without
being
the meeting
excluded.
changes. That's right. Without the meeting changes.
You could do that if you desire.
Well, let's do this instead. I'm going to make a substitute motion. And my substitute motion is going to be to approve this item without the changes regarding the public meetings.
For the record, that's section 4.
That's correct. And also to amend the section regarding appeals of P&Z zoning decisions to define an aggrieved person as anyone who's been given notice and lives within, is it 300 feet? 300 feet of the zoning case, and to amend sentence number 2 of that section to state, City Council may by a majority vote taken at any time up to and including the next regular council meeting of P&Z's decision, authorize the Planning and Development Director to file a written notice of appeal of the P&Z's decision.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second on the substitute motion. Any discussion on the substitute motion?
Well, I got a comment.
Yes.
I think we just proved what I said earlier, that obviously you can amend it at any time. And I would have a request of especially our development community. And I'm part of it, a small scale part of it. If I told my dog or my kids all the time that they're bad and they're the worst, they probably turn out to be bad and the worst. High Point's growing. High Point's doing a lot of good things. High Point is not the worst. I speak to a lot of people that serve on other councils. I speak to a lot of them in D.C. Every one of them tells me that their planning department, their permitting departments are all described as the worst. And I'm about tired of the narrative. I do support your motion.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Can you read the motion?
Okay. Motion.
I'm not sure of what it says.
Yes. It's a motion to approve, deleting the changes to the public citizen information meeting that are, I think it's section 2.2.3D in that section. Also changing, amending appeals of P&Z zoning decision. I believe that is section 2.4.3 to state that an aggrieved person is defined as anyone who is within 300 feet of the proposed zoning change, and that sentence 2 of that section be amended to read, City Council may, by a majority vote taken at any time up to and including the next regular council meeting of P&Z's decision, authorize the Planning and Development Director to file a written notice of appeal of the P&Z's decision. Any other questions, comments on the motion? Okay, all those in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Next, we have some reappointments to the High Point Economic Development Corporation Board. These reappointments will take effect on a term beginning on the date of reappointment and ending on December 31st, 2025. The people to be reappointed are Aaron Kleiner, Brenda Dietz, Chris Weitzel, Justin Thompson, and Scott Holbrook. And I make a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. And lastly, we have a consideration of the appointment of Tasha Logan Ford to the North Carolina Municipal Power Agency 1 Board of Commissioners. And I will make a motion for approval. Okay. Motion and second for approval. Any discussion on this, Madam Manager? Would you like to be heard on this?
I serve at the pleasure of council.
Well, I just want to make a comment that we'll have the best one there representing any other city anywhere. Yay, thank you for.
Thank you, Councilman.
being on to serve.
And Mayor, if I can also say, I don't know if we said this in any of our public meetings, but a special thank you to Latimer Alexander, who served in that capacity for a number of years, who's a former council member. We appreciate that work. We also appreciate what our former deputy city manager and former interim city manager, Randy McCaslin, is still doing with that group. I think he's a part of that commission. I may be getting it mixed up, but
He is, he currently serves as a board member.
as a board member. So absolutely. So thank you for agreeing to join, but also thank you to those gentlemen still serving and have
You
served.
beat me to it. Any other comments? Any questions on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
Motion to adjourn.
There's been a motion made to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
There was a discussion before you would do that.
Okay, motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion to adjourn? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes and meeting is adjourned.
Real quick for everybody listening, I had some guys from American Legion that were going to present something. They had to head out because we were long-winded, but